The people watching in the crowd didn't understand why Kevin was doing this. "What the heck is that do?" Mike was confused. "Does he think his head is harder than a sword?" Lionel let out a laugh. "What a dumb way to die," Luther sneered. Meanwhile, Harley, Wayne, and even Nadia slapped their armrests and stood up from their seats almost at the same time. They all sensed that something was wrong, but even if they wanted to save Kevin, it would be too late for them to intervene as it was all happening so quickly. A bitter smile appeared on Kevin's face. Is this how I'll die? Amidst the uncertainty of his fate, Kevin closed his eyes. At that moment, he felt that time had slowed down and his entire life flashed before his eyes. Countless memories from the past suddenly swept through his mind. However, as time passed, the excruciating pain that Kevin was expecting never came. When he slowly opened his eyes, he was surprised to see the Night King standing in front of him. As for Kelly, she had been sent flying towards the other end of the arena. Kevin could see her using her sword for support as she got up from the ground. "What are you doing here?" Kevin asked the Night King curiously. "Instead of asking me that, you should take a look at your own situation." The Night King's expression was very serious. Before Kevin could react, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Feeling pain and discomfort all over his face and neck, he quickly realized that he had been pierced with tiny spikes. The blood loss was making him dizzy, and as he started pulling them out, he realized they were magnetic. They started attaching themselves outside the pocket where he kept the night dagger. No wonder he was being pulled towards Kelly's sword just a moment ago. Suspecting that foul play was involved, he immediately looked up at the platform to find Renee. Before he could, he fell unconscious from all his blood loss. "Who are you? How dare you cause trouble here?" Wayne shouted as he and the other leaders ran to the arena. "Your contestant may not be good enough to win on her own merit, but what gives you the right to make a sneak attack on my student? Using such a despicable method, how can you still call yourself an honorable leader?" The Night King disdainfully looked at the school leaders trying to find the culprit. "What sneak attack? Do you have any proof? It was obvious to me that Kevin was running toward Kelly's sword of his own free will. Perhaps he just wanted to swiftly kill himself to make things easier for everyone," Renee retorted in a cold voice. However, there was fear in her eyes. She had no idea who this mysterious man was. Hearing their conversation, the surrounding crowd didn't dare to speak. Fearing for their lives, they froze in their seats, waiting for the scene to unfold. "What a glib tongue you have. I should teach you a lesson." After saying this, the Night King suddenly gave Renee a powerful shove that sent her flying across the arena. She landed right next to Kelly and spat out a mouthful of blood. The leaders from the top 10 organizations were even more afraid when they saw the Night King up close. Their bodies became extremely tense. A couple of them drew their weapons but didn't want to provoke a potentially powerful enemy. "Who are you exactly?" Wayne braced himself and asked again. "You've hurt my student badly. As his mentor, I have to protect and avenge him," the Night King replied coldly. At this point, the crowd couldn't help but react. "That man is Kevin's mentor? How come I've never heard of him before?" Lionel wondered. "How can a useless son-in-law like him afford a private mentor?" Mike sneered. "It's not easy to strike fear in people like them. Who is that man?" Luther was curious. While this was going on, Lily left her seat and quickly ran to Kevin. She picked him up from the ground and started crying. "The top 10 organizations are just evil people who are vying for power, fame, and wealth. I can't believe that they'd resort to doing such shameless things just to get ahead." Mackenzie gritted her teeth as Dalton, Penny, and Phoebe all shook their heads in disgust. Knowing that they were partly to blame for what had happened, Wayne and Harley were afraid to come forward. Who would have thought that Kevin had such a powerful mentor? Meanwhile, Jeffrey and the other leaders focused all their attention on the Night King. Despite having strength in numbers, they knew that he wasn't someone to be taken lightly. If they were all taken down by a single person in front of this crowd, they would certainly lose the respect of everyone there. What exactly is this greater good that you keep talking about? Are you simply in the business of bullying others just to keep yourselves in power? The Night King's fearless eyes swept again across the group. Answer my question. Who are you? Standing alongside the other leaders, Wayne suddenly asked loudly. I don't have time to waste with you people. I'm going to take my student away now, so don't try to stop me, unless you wish to die. Then the Night King turned around and stepped in front of Lily. I'm Kevin's mentor. Let me have him. The Night King didn't give Lily a chance to reply as he snatched Kevin from her arms. He then took out a small pouch from his pocket and applied some clotting powder onto his face and neck to seal his wounds. Otherwise, Kevin would have died from blood loss before even leaving the arena. Although the Night King really wanted to avenge Kevin, the most important thing right now was to get him somewhere safe and treat him. Besides, he figured that as long as the top 10 organizations existed, he could always have his revenge later on. Soon after, the Night King left the arena with Kevin in his arms. As Wayne and the other leaders looked on, none of them had the courage to stop him. After all, the Night King's previous warning had been quite ominous. When they were both gone from everyone's sight, the school's leaders let out a sigh of relief. Everyone, I hereby announce that the winner of this competition is Kevin. However, because he was seriously injured, we can't proceed to the final stage right now, Wayne declared. The expressions of the school's leaders changed in an instant. The competition had attracted so much attention and featured contestants from the top 10 organizations because the final victor would have the opportunity to kill Roger Knott. But now, with Wayne's decision, wouldn't today's events be cut short? The other leaders would have none of this. What are you saying? Kelly never lost. She was still standing at the end of the fight while Kevin was practically unconscious and needed his mentor to save him, Renee argued. Besides, didn't you say that the competition wouldn't end until one of them died? If it wasn't for that mysterious man suddenly appearing, Kevin would have surely died by now. In that case, Kelly deserves to be declared the victor. Renee's right, Wayne. You're being too biased towards the students of the Healing Arts School. Why don't we ask the referee to make the call instead? Paul remarked. A gentleman must always keep his word, Wayne, but don't treat our organizations like mere pawns just so you can crown your own student at the end, Jeffrey implored. Just admit that the competition was rigged from the very start. Why did you announce Kevin as the winner when their fight ended so abruptly? You need to give everyone a good explanation, Renee demanded. The battle did indeed come to an abrupt end, but let me ask you, Kevin clearly had the upper hand, easily dodging Kelly's strikes. All of a sudden, he gets pulled towards Kelly's sword, but starts bleeding profusely without even touching the blade. I assume you know the reason better than any of us. Those tiny magnetic spikes look pretty familiar. Isn't the owner of the company that produces them a member of the Union? Wayne accused her fearlessly. I don't know what you're talking about. Stop spreading baseless lies. Renee adamantly denied any involvement. If it weren't for your antics, that powerful and mysterious person wouldn't have come here to threaten us. Anyway, I won't say anything else, but I'm standing by what I said earlier. The Healing Arts School will no longer accommodate any members of the Union, so you can leave my school immediately, Wayne smiled. Everyone was shocked that the mysterious man who saved Kevin's life was his mentor. When Kevin lost consciousness, the Night King threatened everyone. He then sealed Kevin's wounds before taking him away for further treatment. After declaring Kevin the competition's winner, Wayne defended his decision by blaming Renee's actions for drawing the Night King's wrath. When she denied it, Wayne banished the Union from his school. Nadia then revealed the Herbalist Society's interest in Kevin and showed support for the Healing Arts School. None of the other leaders dared to go against them. At that point, none of the other leaders dared to argue with Wayne. Seeing that nobody else was going to side with her, Renee angrily called her fellow Union members to leave. As they stormed off, she sneered, "You haven't seen the last of us. Remember this day." When they were gone, Nadia suddenly spoke. Everyone, I have a few words as well that I wanted to share. While we still don't know much about his mysterious mentor, Kevin is someone that the Herbalist Society is very interested in." Before anyone could reply, Nadia continued, "Furthermore, the Herbalist Society and the Healing Arts School are partners, so from now on, the Union will never get another herbal pill from us. I hope the rest of you won't cause any trouble so that we can all continue to coexist in peace. And if you ever decide to pull off something like what the Union did, consider the consequences carefully." Wayne and the others looked at each other in mutual understanding. Even if the other leaders had their reservations about being associated with the Healing Arts School after today's events, they still provided competent graduates to work for each other, so they had no plans to risk cutting ties with them. Moreover, who would dare go against the Herbalist Society unless they didn't want to get another pill from them in the future? It was much better to have both organizations as allies than enemies. After the closing ceremony, each of the school leaders took their members and left, and the Healing Arts students followed their professors to their respective classrooms. But what about Kevin? When Lily returned home, she sat on the couch in a daze. Her eyes had already been red and swollen from crying so much, but she still couldn't help but shed more tears after recalling what had happened to Kevin. "My precious daughter, why are you crying? Shouldn't you be happy if that piece of Dorothy coldly remarked as she sat by Lily's side and drank an espresso. "Mom, how can you say that? Kevin is my husband." Lily sobbed even more as she replied, "Lily, are you kidding me? That good-for-nothing husband of yours only knows how to eat, sleep, and wait for his death. Once he's dead, you'll be free to marry someone new," Dorothy exclaimed. When Lily didn't reply, Dorothy continued, "A beautiful woman like you deserves someone who will finally treat you right. Don't worry, I'll definitely find you a rich and handsome husband in no time." After Lily had called her mother to tell her about what happened at the Healing Arts School, Dorothy was elated, especially when she heard that Kevin was on the verge of death. And as soon as the call ended, Dorothy couldn't help but jump for joy, as if she'd just won the lottery. Ever since Kevin came into their lives, Dorothy had always felt sorry for Lily, thinking that any man would be an immediate upgrade over her useless son-in-law. However, no matter how many times Dorothy tried to set Lily up with a better prospect, her daughter would always choose to stay with Kevin. Now that he was finally about to die, she could finally find another man that Lily wouldn't be able to refuse. With everything suddenly falling into place, how could she not be overjoyed? "Mom, you don't have to look for someone anymore. I don't want to marry another person. If Kevin dies, I'll live on as his widow." Lily's tone was very firm. "Nonsense! What are you talking about? Do you really love that so much?" Dorothy's expression suddenly changed. "Anyway, I don't care. As soon as he dies, I'll immediately find a new husband for you, and I won't take no for an answer." Lily simply rolled her eyes and sighed. Why was her mother so stubborn? "Besides, I'm getting old and you still haven't given me a grandchild. With a new husband, you can finally get pregnant." The more Dorothy spoke, the more energized she became. And with this last thought, she suddenly felt the urge to go out and find a man for Lily right then and there. "Mom, it's getting late. You should go back to your room and rest." Lily didn't want to continue arguing with her mother. "Why don't you get some sleep too? Aren't you going to class tomorrow?" Dorothy was concerned for Lily's health. Lily opened her mouth to respond but decided not to say anything and simply nodded. She wanted to wait by the couch so that if Kevin came home, she would immediately know that he was alive and well. Despite knowing in her heart that she was just deceiving herself, she had to hold on to something in order to cope. Still, Lily remained hopeful that Kevin would survive. After all, he'd been rescued by his mentor. And although nobody seemed to know his identity, his convincing words and the way he sealed Kevin's wounds made her believe that his mentor could truly save him. "Lily, don't tell me you plan to wait for Kevin here. You have to go back to your room to get a good night's rest. If Kevin wants to die, then let him die alone. I don't want your health to suffer because of him." Dorothy spoke very seriously. "Why are you always so mean to Kevin? Although he didn't have a steady job for years, he's always had great respect for you. And right now, he's actually doing pretty well. and has started making more of an effort to take care of us both. Lily defended Kevin. Didn't he embarrass me so many times in front of my friends and family? He's barely done anything right, and I'm being generous when I say that. Dorothy scoffed loudly. Anyway, it's useless to keep talking about him. No matter what you say, I'll never let Kevin back in our family. After saying that, Dorothy turned around and went upstairs. In that instant, she had indeed thought about some of Kevin's benefits. But so what? In her eyes, Kevin was just a useless son-in-law who came to live in their house and had been freeloading for 3 years. To her, the best possible thing he could do was to die and be forgotten. Meanwhile, in the Anderson family's mansion, Phoebe had been staring at her coffee mug for some time. The mug was actually empty, so clearly her mind was elsewhere. Seeing her like this, Truman sighed as he sat next to his daughter without saying anything. What happened in the Healing Arts School today had caused a lot of buzz in all of the other herbalist schools and organizations throughout Chicago. No one had thought that the so-called useless son-in-law would end up defeating some of the top 10 organization's best students in a martial arts competition. Unfortunately, Kevin's life was now hanging by a thread after battling a member of the union. And if it wasn't for his mentor swooping in to save him at the last second, he probably would have died on the spot. Although Kevin's life or death didn't have as much impact on Truman compared to his daughter, he could only sigh at the potential loss of a genius in the world of antique appraisers, one who had helped his business many times. Meanwhile, Phoebe was thinking deeply about Kevin. When she returned home, she felt like she'd lost her soul after seeing him in such a bloody and weakened state. Phoebe, don't be too sad. After all, Kevin might not be dead. Didn't you say that he was rescued by his mentor? Truman frowned as he comforted her. Dad, do you actually believe what you just said? I also hope that nothing will happen to Kevin, but you weren't there when it happened. His entire face was covered in blood. Phoebe didn't even finish her words before she started bawling her eyes out as she pictured it in her mind. Phoebe, don't cry. I can't bear to see you like this. Truman frowned even more as he worried about his daughter. However, even after consoling her for a few minutes, Phoebe still wouldn't stop crying. This made Truman's forehead wrinkle as he tried to find a way to help. Do you really want to save Kevin? Truman seemed to have made a big decision. Yes, of course I want to save him. Phoebe sobbed silently. Are you willing to give up everything for him? If that's the case, then I have an idea, Truman suggested. Dad, what do you mean? Phoebe suddenly stopped crying and looked at her father in disbelief. Apart from owning Anderson jewelry, she knew very well that her father was just an ordinary person. Truman wasn't an expert in making herbal medicine and didn't align himself with any herbalist organizations either. How could he possibly save Kevin? At the same time, Phoebe also understood that her father wasn't a person who said things lightly. He must truly have thought of something. Truman slowly leaned back on the couch. He seemed to be conflicted. He really thought he could keep the idea to himself, but seeing Phoebe like this, it seemed like he had no other choice but to tell her. Phoebe, you probably never knew this, but 10 years ago you were almost set to marry a man named Jared Hayes. At the time, his father was a loyal customer at Anderson Jewelry. However, the business was struggling to stay afloat. In exchange for a large donation, we made a handshake deal for the two of you to marry. But before the deal could be finalized, I backed out at the last minute. I never told you because I felt so ashamed about it, Truman explained. I never knew the business was struggling that much. Phoebe's eyes grew wide when she heard this. Back then, she was still studying in France as a college senior, so she rarely got to fly home for a visit. When she started working for Anderson Jewelry after college, the business had already recovered. Truman continued. Anyway, although the Hayes family is the second most prominent family in Detroit, Jared was known to be arrogant, self-centered, immoral, and bad-tempered, so as your father, I really didn't want you to marry him once I found out. Eventually, I was able to buy and sell enough rare antiques to pay off all our debts, and within a year, the business was thriving once again. Still, I feel guilty about having considered that offer without your consent. I understand, but what does their family have to do with me saving Kevin? Phoebe asked in confusion. Based on how you describe Kevin's condition, he must have lost too much blood from multiple punctures to his face and neck. While his wounds may have already clotted, his veins and arteries are likely still damaged, and this can cause further complications if left untreated. The Hayes family has long been known to produce the occasional rejuvenation pill, whose medicinal properties should be able to repair all of Kevin's damaged veins and arteries in no time. However, its ingredients are incredibly hard to find, so outside of the family, they'll only give it in exchange for something they want. Jared's still single. You know what? Just forget about it. Truman ended abruptly, immediately regretting that he'd suggested it in the first place. Phoebe knew that if she wanted to save Kevin, she needed the rejuvenation pill, and based on her father's words, she now knew exactly what it would cost. How willing was she to sacrifice herself for him? After a few minutes, Phoebe walked over to her father and sat down beside him on the couch. Her eyes were filled with tears. However, her tone was extremely firm. "Dad, can you help me contact the Hayes family? If they can give me the rejuvenation pill, then I'm willing to marry Jared." "Phoebe, no. As your father, I can't let you make that mistake. You'd surely end up miserable for the rest of your life. I know you want to save Kevin, but you have to put yourself first. You'd be giving up your career, your freedom, and everything else that you have for an unworthy cause." Truman stood up from the couch and begged his daughter not to do it. "Kevin has a special talent in antique appraisal. He'll surely be an asset to Anderson Jewelry for years and decades to come. More than I could ever be," Phoebe replied. "But even if he's the best appraiser we've ever seen, so what? It's not worth losing my daughter over. Besides, don't forget that Kevin is still Lily's husband. Why are you so willing to sacrifice everything for a married man? He'll never be able to reciprocate your love for him." Truman shook his head. Phoebe slowly raised her head and looked at her father through teary eyes. "If my mother had listened to my grandfather, would I even be here?" Phoebe's hands tightly gripped the corner of her clothes. Truman sat back on the couch as if he'd suffered a heavy blow to his heart. His old face was filled with wistfulness as he thought about his late wife. Back then, he was just an unknown brat, while Phoebe's mother was the beautiful young daughter of her prestigious family. The love between the two naturally drew opposition from everyone, but in the end, Phoebe's mother stubbornly chose to marry him, bringing him a lot of the wealth and fame. When he thought about it, he knew that Phoebe was right and no longer tried to stop her. Phoebe continued, "Dad, I know you're only trying to look out for my best interest. I also know that I'm being pretty irrational, but you know what? Love makes you do crazy things. And if Kevin dies, I'll never forgive myself for as long as I live." Truman stared at his daughter in a daze. He suddenly saw how much she was like her mother. "Dad, you know I've never begged you for anything since I was young. Just this once, I'm begging you. Please help me with this, okay?" Phoebe pleaded with tears in her voice. Truman quietly got up from the couch and walked into his study. He was about to make an important call. 2 days passed very quickly, and Kevin had yet to reappear in public. During that time, all kinds of rumors and conspiracies about his life and death had spread all over Chicago. At the Healing Arts School, Wayne Ford and Harley Shepard didn't stop their students from speculating. After all, it was unknown whether Kevin was alive or dead. 5 more days passed. By then, Williams Media had suffered heavy losses. Due to all the uncertainty surrounding the condition of its CEO, many of their artists and business partners decided to terminate their affiliation with the company. They wanted to get out of their contracts so badly that they didn't care about the sky-high penalties this entailed. When news of this broke, it affected the nerves of many investors, causing Williams Media's stock price to drop to an all-time low. If not for Mitchell Cook and the others bailing the company out, it might have been forced to declare bankruptcy. At the same time, another piece of explosive news was spreading. The only daughter of Truman Anderson, Phoebe, was set to marry the Hayes family's eldest son, Jared, in Detroit. This was something that nobody had expected. Meanwhile, inside Kevin's apartment at Corwin Tower, the Night King was looking out the window. Even though it was already autumn, the skies were gloomy, and you could hear thunder. The Night King slowly took out a golden pill as he approached Kevin, who was asleep in his bed. Just hang in there, Kevin. I've finally concocted a golden pill to help you recover. When you wake up, you have to keep fighting. Don't give up, otherwise this will all be for nothing. When he finished speaking, the Night King put the pill into Kevin's mouth. 3 seconds later, Kevin's pale skin suddenly returned to its natural complexion as a warm glow spread through his body. At the same time, Phoebe looked out her window at the dark clouds in the sky. She seemed a lot more haggard than ever. 2 days before, the Hayes family had sent the rejuvenation pill to her. In exchange, both families had agreed that the Anderson-Hayes wedding would be held on the 15th of the following month, which was about 20 days from today. But now there was another tricky problem that Phoebe hadn't accounted for. While she now had the rejuvenation pill, she didn't know where Kevin was. "Kevin, I can save you. Where are you?" Phoebe kept thinking in her heart. Truman, who was standing at her bedroom door, let out a long sigh and quietly turned around to walk downstairs. "Kevin, you don't know how lucky you are. In exchange for saving your life, my daughter's happiness will be ruined forever." Truman lamented as he clenched his fists tightly. Back at the apartment at Corwin Tower, the Night King looked at Kevin with a satisfied smile on his face. Even though Kevin was still unconscious, the Night King could sense that the golden pill was working.
Please subscribe to the Pocket FM YouTube channel and press the bell icon for instant notification. Check out our channel for more such exciting shows.